They called him the Patriarch, not out of respect, but out of fear. In a house hidden deep within the Appalachian hollers, he raised children who called him both father and grandfather. When locals spoke his name, it was in whispers, as if uttering it might wake something ancient and rotten. No birth records, no marriage licenses, just a string of names, repeating over generations. And if you trace the bloodline back far enough, you'll find it begins and ends with the same man. Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. The story we're about to uncover isn't written in any textbook. You won't find it in a museum or displayed behind glass, but buried deep in the soil of a forgotten American county, rotting under collapsed roofs and broken family trees, is the tale of a lineage that defied nature, law, and morality. It begins, like many stories of inherited darkness, with isolation. The McCutcheons weren't always monsters. In fact, the early 1800s census described them as God-fearing farmers. But that was before the flood, before the town bridge washed away, cutting their land off from the rest of the county. In the years that followed, the name McCutcheon slowly disappeared from local records, not because they died out, oh no, but because they turned inward. By 1884, no outsider had set foot on their property in over a decade. That same year, a traveling preacher reportedly found a deformed child suckling at the breast of a woman who would later call him both son and brother. The preacher's journal ends abruptly that winter. Some say he vanished in the woods. Others believe he never left the house alive. The truth is, the McCutcheons didn't just lose their connection to the outside world, they chose to abandon it. They believed their blood was pure and that mixing with outsiders would dilute what they called the holy line. What happened next would spiral into generations of compounding deformity, madness, and something far darker than incest. The man at the center of it all was Elam McCutcheon, born in 1862, according to the surviving entries in the family Bible. He was the third son of Elias McCutcheon and his youngest daughter Ruth. You heard that right. His mother was also his sister. Elam would later take both his half-sister and his niece as wives, one by blood, the other by law, although no legal records exist. The family scrawled their own names in the margins of that crumbling Bible, as if trying to sanctify something unspeakable. By the time Elam was 40, he had fathered 9 children, 6 of whom were also his grandchildren. The community, or what was left of it, began calling him the Hollow Father. He never left the valley, not even once, but his influence spread through the family like a disease. His children bore the same wide-set eyes, the same sunken jaws. Several couldn't speak. One was born with no eyelids. Another was buried alive, mistaken for stillborn until neighbors heard screams through the dirt. And still, the McCutcheons kept to themselves. In 1911, a state worker doing mineral surveys claimed to find a compound hidden in the brush. Cabins with windows blacked out, animals mutilated, children moving in strange, synchronized patterns. He wrote only one line in his field notes: "Something in there ain't human anymore." No official follow-up was ever conducted. Why? Some say the McCutcheons paid off local officials. Others think it was fear. After all, if you found a family that had folded in on itself for over a century, would you go back? But Elam wasn't just a father. He was an architect, a planner. He created a system of breeding, assigning partners like livestock, keeping careful charts, ensuring the blood stayed close. He was obsessed with control, but what he couldn't control was decay. By 1920, many of his offspring began to exhibit signs of severe cognitive collapse, screaming fits, tremors, flesh that wouldn't heal. A county nurse who briefly visited the area called it the most terrifying example of generational rot I've ever seen. And yet, no arrests, no interventions, because no one wanted to see. The deeper you look into the McCutcheon records, if you can even call them that, the more it feels like walking through a maze with no exit. Every name echoes another. Elam's children gave birth to their siblings. Cousins married nephews. One woman, Mabel, reportedly gave birth at 14 to twins, one of whom fathered her second child when he was just 11. It wasn't just biological collapse, it was spiritual corrosion. A former schoolteacher, Mrs. Lillian Spriggs, tried to start a small classroom in the nearest holler during the 1930s. She recalled a boy named Gideon McCutcheon, who sat in the back of the one-room schoolhouse, silent, never blinked, never spoke. He smelled like wet iron, she wrote in her letters, and he watched the other children like they were prey. She taught for less than 3 months before she vanished. Her car was later found at the edge of the woods, keys still in the ignition. The sheriff at the time simply wrote, "She must have gone walking." No one searched the property. From time to time, neighboring towns would hear strange howls echoing through the hills. Some thought it was just coyotes. Others swore it was human, but twisted somehow, distorted, like the throat didn't know how to form pain properly anymore. By now, the McCutcheons weren't just a family. They were a secret. The county clerk's office had instructions to file all inquiries under property disputes or trespassing complaints. Old-timers at the local bar would go quiet if you even mentioned the name. People knew. They always knew. In 1947, a forest fire swept through parts of the valley. Firefighters reported seeing people watching them from the trees, naked and pale, completely silent, with matching expressionless faces. When asked how many they counted, one firefighter said, "Too many to be just one family." He quit 2 weeks later, moved to Ohio, never came back. Till no formal investigation was launched, not because no one believed it, but because people believed it too much. There are some doors no one wants to open, some families you let burn because what's inside should never see daylight again. By the 1950s, the McCutcheons had become more myth than memory, the kind of story told around campfires, always ending with, "And that's why you don't go past Devil's Creek after dark." But the bloodline still pulsed in the hills, hidden, muted, souring behind sagging walls. That decade, a young social worker named Eleanor Price, just out of college, was assigned a routine welfare check in the county. She was bright, determined, and completely unaware of the name written on the folder. McCutcheon, Samuel. She drove up alone. The locals warned her not to, but Eleanor had read the reports. They all said the same thing. Inconclusive, no follow-up required. She wasn't heard from for 5 days. When she finally returned, she wasn't the same. Pale, shaking. She resigned within the week, never spoke of what she saw. But she did write one final letter to her supervisor, which was quietly filed and later leaked. In it, she described entering the McCutcheon home, or what was left of it. She found no furniture, no electricity, just walls scratched with names, repeated over and over, Elam, Ruth, Mabel, Elam, Elam, Elam. She said the children didn't speak, that their eyes didn't move, and that one of them, a boy, maybe 9 years old, had the exact same face as the ancient man who opened the door. Same eyes, she wrote, same voice, same smile, as if the old man had birthed himself again. Eleanor ended the letter with one chilling line. Whatever that family was, it stopped being human a long time ago. That should have triggered alarm bells, but instead, the file was buried. The county marked the property as unsuitable for development and erased the address from public maps. It was easier that way. By now, the inbreeding wasn't just a biological event. It was ritualized. The family didn't just allow it, they worshipped it, believed it preserved something ancient, something they called the original seed. Elam's teachings had become gospel, passed down through repetition, etched into skin, spoken in dead languages no longer found in books. Some say the McCutcheons believed they were creating a pure vessel, a child that would complete the line. Others say that vessel was born and still lives. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? By the 1970s, whispers of the McCutcheon legacy resurfaced, but not from the government or even journalists. No, it came from something far stranger, a missing persons group. A cluster of amateur sleuths had begun tracking disappearances in rural Appalachia and noticed a disturbing pattern. Every case within a 15-mile radius of Devil's Creek ended the same way. No body, no clues, no trace. Just gone. They marked a stretch of land known only to locals as the Black Bend. What they found was worse than anything they imagined. Beneath the tree canopy, they discovered a decaying cabin, half collapsed, consumed by vines and moss. Inside, a bed frame nailed to the floor, chains bolted to the walls, symbols, some biblical, others older, carved into every surface. On the bed, a single photograph remained, a pale man holding a newborn with his eyes closed, mouth slightly open, and hands wrapped around the infant's throat, not in violence, but in prayer. They turned it over, scrawled on the back, "Elam returns." DNA testing was impossible. No confirmed McCutcheon samples existed, but the photo was dated 1974. That would mean Elam, born in 1862, was somehow alive, over a century later. Or maybe, as some believe, he never died at all. That the bloodline had looped itself into something that could not perish, something reborn, generation after generation, wearing the same face. The cabin was burned 3 days after the photo was taken. No official order, no record of who did it. Just ash, where once stood what could have been the last proof of an American horror buried alive. And yet, the disappearances continued. Campers vanishing without a sound, bones found picked clean, distorted voices caught on forest recorders, whispering names, always the SHA, me ones. Local legend says the McCutcheons still live underground, in limestone caves too tight for outsiders to reach. That the family moved downward, nesting in earth like insects, breeding in the dark. Some say if you stand at the edge of Devil's Creek at night, you'll hear lullabies drifting through the wind. Off-key, crooked, as if sung by a mouth that forgot how to be human long ago. And somewhere down there, Elam is still watching. In 1988, a man named Thomas Wren bought a parcel of land on the edge of Black Bend for dirt cheap. He was an urban transplant, newly divorced, looking for quiet and solitude. What he got was something else entirely. Wren kept a journal. He was meticulous, detailed, and over the 6 months he lived there, the entries shifted from ordinary to unhinged. At first he wrote about the silence, the beauty of the trees, the strange comfort of total disconnection. Then, the scratching began. He described hearing it on the roof, then under the floorboards. At first he thought it was raccoons, or maybe a fox, but the sounds became rhythmic, like fingers, digging. He boarded the windows, slept with a gun, and still, every night, the scratching got closer. In one entry, dated October 4th, he wrote, "I saw something watching me from the tree line. Pale, eyes too far apart. It didn't blink. It smiled when I lit my cigarette." Later entries became erratic, rambling. He wrote of dreams filled with whispering voices, all saying the same word, Elam. He described waking up to footprints on the inside of his cabin, objects rearranged, a cross carved into his bedroom wall while he slept. His final entry reads, "It's in me. I can feel it growing. The blood is wrong." Wren was found weeks later in a motel 5 towns away, naked and incoherent. He was diagnosed with acute psychosis, but when doctors tested his blood, something strange appeared. A mutation, one so rare it matched only a handful of other patients on record, all from that same Appalachian Valley. Those records were sealed. To this day, no one knows what Thomas saw, whether he encountered a surviving McCutcheon or simply cracked under the weight of inherited dread. But something happened to him, something real, And even now, 30 years later, hikers still report strange sightings around Black Bend. Children with mere, roared faces, songs with no melody, the overwhelming sense of being watched by someone who sees more than just your body, who sees your lineage, and always, that name, Elam. Not just a man anymore. A curse. Passed down like a disease waiting in the bones of the hills, where bloodlines rot in silence and no scream ever escapes the trees. The last known photograph linked to the McCutcheon line surfaced in 2013. It came from a trail cam set up by a group of wildlife researchers tracking coyotes. The camera triggered one night near the old Devil's Creek ravine. What it captured wasn't an animal, it was a girl, maybe 12, naked, pale as milk. Her arms were too long, knees bent the wrong way, and her head, it hung slightly to one side like her neck had given up on holding it. Her eyes reflected the flash, glowing white, but it was her smile that chilled the researchers to their core. Wide, unnatural, the exact grin from the 1974 Elam photo. The team turned the footage over to local authorities, but within days the camera and all associated files were lost. A wildlife official later confirmed off the record that the county demanded the researchers vacate the area for their own safety. No formal explanation was ever given. Unofficially, one of the researchers kept a copy. He shared it anonymously on an obscure cryptid forum. That post was online for less than 2 hours before the entire thread vanished. The account was deleted, the IP scrubbed, but a few screenshots survived, and in every one the file name of the image reads elam.jpg. That was over a decade ago. Since then, the forest has grown thicker, the records more faded, the silence around Devil's Creek deeper, and yet strange stories persist. Hikers waking to find their boots laced too tightly, backpacks moved, trail signs rearranged. A few even report hearing the sound of soft breathing just behind them, though no one is there. Some believe the McCutcheon line finally died off, crumbled under its own genetic weight. Others believe it transcended, that Elam's plan worked, that the generations of inbreeding didn't just preserve a bloodline but molded it into something old, something hollow, a lineage that no longer bows or fears daylight because it has no need for it. It's said that on moonless nights, if you follow Devil's Creek far enough, you'll reach the place where the trees stop growing, where the ground sinks under your feet, and if you wait in silence, you might see a light in the distance. But don't follow it, because once you step inside that circle, you don't come back the same, or at all. Would you like a closing line to end the video now?